Hello, everybody. It's your boy, Pigskin Pete. Welcome back to the fifth quarter show with Pete and Rover. It's finally the end of the regular season. We are moving into championship week mode. And there's lots of games to talk about. There's lots of coaching changes. There's lots of controversies going on. So we are here at the end of this 2019 regular season to bring you all of the juicy tidbits. What's up, Spencer? How you doing, brother?
I'm doing well. It was a crazy week last week. Actually, some really surprising outcomes last week, Pete. Some big surprising outcomes, and we just have so much to talk about. This is the best time of the year. It's a little bittersweet because the football season is almost over, but now you have college coaching vacancies, you have the playoffs. And can we recap last week before we go into, I guess, previewing the upcoming games?
Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you as far as that goes. So go ahead. Start with what you want to talk about from last week.
Very surprised. And I got to eat a little bit of crow on this. I mean, I know we didn't discuss this game, but the fact that Wisconsin threw the ball on Minnesota was very impressive. And I love Fleck. I love the Golden Gophers. To go 10-2 was terrific. To beat Penn State, to get the national recognition in College Game Day, it's all going to help for recruiting. I mean, to go to the Rose Bowl would have been exceptional. And there's a huge difference for Minnesota between the Outback Bowl and the freaking Rose Bowl. But for Wisconsin to throw the football, I give them a lot of credit for pivoting, and I thought that they looked very good, and they asserted themselves as kind of the team that we know they are. Now, I don't think Wisconsin, though, is going to have a chance against Ohio State, and to me, Pete, I don't know if Wisconsin can ever do what LSU did because they need that Joe Brady. They need that dynamic quarterback. They had Russell Wilson for 1 year, and that's what their program needs. Now, they are up in Wisconsin, so it's harder to replicate LSU, but it still was a very impressive performance by those guys last week. I will say that.
It was. It helps to have a Heisman front runner as your running back who's run for over 2,000 yards every year that he's been there. Their defense, Wisconsin's
receiver too.
Yeah, and Wisconsin's defense is very solid until they play elite offenses. And I'm not saying Minnesota doesn't have an elite offense, but compared to Ohio State, LSU, Clemson, Alabama, teams like that's the kind of teams that I think Wisconsin just can't match up with offensively. And their defense is, while it's very good, it's not elite. You know what I'm saying?
I think that their defense is pretty damn close to elite, though. It's in the offense.
It's not elite. It's very good. Very good.
You would say top 5, but not in the top 3, though.
I wouldn't even say top 5. No. But listen, Minnesota.
I would say top 8, top 7, top 8.
Minnesota, a very impressive year. And if Minnesota somehow makes it to a decent bowl game, which they will with their record, and wins 11 games to finish out the season, that would be an amazing accomplishment for P.J. Fleck in his second year at Minnesota. It'd be the best season they've had in how long? I mean, when's the last time Minnesota won 11 games?
Said 1905.
See, well, there you go. I mean, that pretty much says it all right there. So hats off to Minnesota for a great season. Of course, that game against Penn State was one of the funnest games that of any of the games that we've seen this year. It was really a lot of fun to watch that on TV.
Yeah.
And I'm sure a lot of fun for the Minnesota fans in particular. Not so fun for the Penn State fans, unfortunately. But
right.
But anyway, so I have to eat a little crow too. I gave P.J. Fleck a lot of flack. I think that P.J. Fleck's a really good coach. I still feel though that P.J. Fleck has somewhat of a ceiling at Minnesota, and it's not because of him. It's just because of Minnesota. It's because, Minnesota's never going to get the recruits that most of these teams in the SEC, Big 12, even the Southern teams in the ACC are going to get. It's just not, because he's not in that recruiting ground. And so I think that he does have a ceiling, and I think that 11 wins, if they get there this season, is Minnesota's ceiling. I just don't see a chance that Minnesota outside of some kind of crazy sort of all the stars aligning miracle year that Minnesota can make it into the playoffs and compete with any of these other teams at the top right now. Do you?
I understand that point. I understand what you're talking about, but that's the reason I love Minnesota, is because Fleck is a 1 in a million coach, kind of like Dabo is to Clemson, in that PJ Fleck, he defies expectation. He is the ultimate exception to the rule of Minnesota football, and that is why he is going to recruit. And Rashad Bateman's from Georgia. He recruits all over the country. So your sentiment is what 90% of people, it's a very intelligent assessment, like what you're talking about. But I'm in the complete minority here. I believe that Minnesota is going to be special. This might sound crazy, but I think they will win a national championship. And I'm not holding out that opinion.
Yeah, and I think that is crazy because, listen, the comparison to Clemson is while it's valid as far as nobody could have seen Dabo Swinney coming in there and doing what he's done at Clemson. I get that part of it. And I think that there's a lot of similarities between Dabo Swinney and a PJ Fleck. They're very similar in a lot of ways. The difference is Dabo Swinney is in a much better situation at Clemson than PJ Fleck is at Minnesota. He's right there in the heart of the recruiting country, sandwiched between North Carolina, Virginia, Tennessee, Georgia, and Florida, and Alabama. I mean, you're talking about outside of Texas and California, that is the heartbeat of recruiting. And so Minnesota's a long way from those areas. And, if you look at the recruiting rankings, Clemson's going to be somewhere around 1 or 2 or maybe 3. We'll see how this goes at the end of the season of recruiting.
Every year. But here's my rebuttal, is that Michigan has come very close to making the college football playoff. Like, they've been in the top 8 some years that they've ended. Like, I'm talking about a couple of years ago. How about Ohio State is up there as well? Ohio State and Penn State. So in the Big Ten, you can get some really awesome football players.
I got you. There's a difference between Ohio, where Ohio is geographically, and, of course, the name brand of Ohio State. I mean, that's also a huge leg up over Minnesota. But Minnesota is basically in Canada. I mean, it's like a Canadian university trying to recruit in the South.
Imagine a boosted up Iowa, like an Iowa with a passing game and a dynamic offense. That's what Minnesota can become.
Yes. And here's the thing.
Wisconsin is not that far from actually winning a national championship themselves. Like, they put themselves in the mix all the time, and Wisconsin is Minnesota. That is the region there.
Right. Here's the thing. Even Wisconsin's a bigger name brand than Minnesota is.
Yes, it is.
And also, I would disagree with the premise that Wisconsin's right there about to win, close to winning a national championship or making the playoffs. They haven't made a playoff yet.
I'm saying that they're the next. They're like maybe outside of the 5. Now, you could argue that the 5 are going to dominate, or Clemson, Alabama, LSU are going to continue to. No, really, it's Clemson, Alabama, and Ohio State are the big power 3.
Yeah, and you got other teams like Georgia knocking on the door.
I get what you're saying. Michigan State, they did make the playoff, right? And
they got shut out.
I just think that Minnesota, though, with PJ Fleck, I mean, nowadays with the way that you can travel and the way that you can recruit these areas, I just do believe in that. That's the one thing that I really do believe in. The one opinion is Fleck can win a national championship.
We'll see.
You're going to see parity over the years. I do.
We'll see. We'll see if you're right. I first of all, I will tell you this much. Just as a fan of college football, I hope that PJ Fleck stays at Minnesota, because I think it's good to have teams like Minnesota have that guy that can, even if they don't ever win a national championship, even if it's just 10 or 11 win seasons here or there, still good to have that, right? Still good to see that.
Yeah.
Where most coaches, when they start to have a lot of success and their name is being brought up for all these other jobs, they'll flee and go to another quote unquote big name program where they think they can win a championship. I like to see Scott Frost at Nebraska. Okay, I think that's good for football. I like to see, as much as I hate Michigan, and well, I don't hate them, but I feel like that they're massively overrated. But I think that Jim Harbaugh being at Michigan, at least it gives people like me a villain to laugh at whenever they don't do anything. But I think that Jim Harbaugh being at Michigan is a good thing, right? I think that
I agree, and he's an alumni there.
Right, exactly. So there you have it. And so speaking of alumni, let's go through some of these coaching changes because you brought up alumni. Matt Luke, who was the coach at Ole Miss, got fired this week. He's an alumni of Ole Miss. Also, the coach at who am I thinking about here? Missouri. Jeff Brom.
Exactly.
Yeah, not Jeff Brom. Barry Odom, another alumni of Missouri, gets fired. You have the Boston College coach gets fired. You have, obviously, the Arkansas coach get fired. You have Clay Helton, who has held on to his job. You have Chris Peterson up at Washington, who didn't get fired but walked away on his own.
Yeah,
so
that's a big one.
Let's start with Clay Helton, because I think that's probably the most important to, at least this week, is because a lot of people thought he was going to be fired. I don't know if Lynn Swann was the athletic director there, right? Former great USC Trojan, Hall of Fame NFL player. Did he step down or did he get fired earlier in the year? I can't remember.
Well, he got removed.
So he was fired.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, so he was fired. So normally,
he's gone.
Normally, whenever an athletic director is fired or even steps down, either way, when an athletic director leaves in any capacity, normally the new athletic director comes in there and he cleans house because he wants to get his guys in there and he wants to put his own stamp on the program. So I think what happened, there was a lot of speculation that Clay Helton was going to be fired. Now, Clay Helton took over a dumpster fire. Let's not sugarcoat it, okay? And I think, considering all things considered, the Pac-12 is not very strong from top to bottom. I mean, they have Utah and Oregon, but outside of that, the teams aren't very good. I mean, they only had 7 bowl teams this year or something. But a lot of people wanted Helton out of there, and I think they might have sort of surveyed the landscape and said, look at all these coaching openings. Look at all the people that are available, that are viable candidates to come to a place like Southern Cal. How many of these guys could we actually get? Urban Meyer was the one that everyone thinks that they wanted. He already said he doesn't want the job. He's not looking to go out there and coach there, at least not right now. And so I think they just said, okay, well, all things considered, we're better off just staying with the guy to keep some continuity instead of this constant turnover.
I have a theory about Urban Meyer, actually.
Okay.
I've heard that that Urban Meyer would have been interested in the position, that he would have taken the job, but because of the Zach Smith case where he kept Zach Smith on, he was kind of, allegedly, I think that it was proven he was being physically abusive towards his wife, the whole story there, all the Florida misconduct, that USC wanted a cleaner image and was not interested in Meyer, actually.
That's something I haven't heard. I've actually heard the opposite. I've heard that they wanted Urban Meyer so much, and Urban Meyer basically said, I'm not interested in coaching at Southern California right now, at least right now.
I think so. Rumors on both sides, it's kind of tough to truly decipher.
Yeah, it's like
real.
Yeah, it's like tabloid media. It's
something that really irked me. And first, I want to give my theory on why Clay Helton is staying. So this new AD, it's not the worst thing for Helton to stay. Initially, it really is upsetting. And it's made really upsetting for Southern Cal fans because firing Helton, even though it's kind of inherently a little bit it's not good to celebrate a guy losing his job, especially a great guy like Clay Helton by all accounts. But for USC, I mean, Clay Helton's not the dream hire. So now this AD is going to get another year to really back channel his way into talking to James Franklin even more. Does that make sense, Pete? James Franklin wasn't coming. Urban, it didn't work out. USC had no bigger names this year. And this AD is going to go fishing this entire year to try to figure something out. And that's what I think happened. And it was too rushed of a process. But what really made it awful was there was a report on Sunday. Somehow this writer on Twitter and everything tricked everybody that Clay Helton was fired. And that's just really frustrating as a fan to kind of see like that Bush League journalism getting out there. Did you probably heard on Sunday that Helton was fired too, right?
Well, I never heard I never heard that he was going to be, certainly. There was a lot of rumors that he would be.
Yeah, there were rumors, but like big time, even big time, where Bruce Feldman had to deny those rumors. But for USC, God,
but isn't what did they go 8-4 this year?
USC still gonna they're gonna be awful.
For a team that has been just so decimated with the coaching changes and injuries and just everything that could possibly go wrong with a major program, controversy, the whole thing, for them to go 8-4, is that really that bad at this point in Helton's coaching tenure there?
I would argue that Clay Helton's not the guy going forward. And even going 8-4, they barely beat Colorado. The Pac-12 is absolutely awful.
They beat Utah.
Plus, they have a quarterback there, Keaton Slovis, that is actually a really legit college quarterback. Now, you can make fun of USC quarterbacks in the NFL, and I get that. But Slovis is an incredible college quarterback. And the fact is, USC is nowhere close to Oregon or Washington now in the Pac-12.
All right, so I'll say this.
I'm not that impressed by 84.
I'm not saying that Clay Helton is the end-all be-all answer, but I'm also saying that has he really done that bad of a job considering the situation that he walked into?
I think that at USC, first of all, he could still recruit 5-star kids.
If anybody's going to sit here and tell me USC has higher standards, since when? When has USC been anything less than underachievers in the past 15 years?
You mean since Peete left?
Yes. Well, I don't know. Maybe not 15 years, 12 years, 13 years, whatever it is.
Who was the guy after Carroll? Was it? I can't.
Didn't Clay Helton win a Rose Bowl a couple of years ago?
With Darnold, he did.
Yes. Okay. How many other Rose Bowls have they won in the past 12 years?
Probably none.
All right, there. That's my point. So, unless here's my problem, and this is not a USC thing. This has to do with all these major programs like USC. I have no problem with you thinking it's time to move on from a guy, but just to fire a guy, I don't get that. You always need to have a plan in place. If you know for certainty that you're going to get a Urban Meyer or somebody of that caliber to go ahead and take over that job, fine, fire him and move those guys in there and start building the team for championships. If you don't have that, then you got to have a plan in place before you just start firing every single guy that comes in there. This has been going on for a while now. There's been 4 coaches in the past 7 years there, something like that. It's crazy.
You do need to be patient, on the guy. And what is actually pretty interesting is that Coach O was actually over there.
I know. And you know what, though? I feel like while Coach O is a great coach, obviously, we've learned that. I think he would have been – I don't know if he would have been successful at Southern Cal.
I see your point because Southern Cal is a Hollywood. You have to look. Yeah. You have to look and talk a certain way. And Coach O's a Cajun, and
right.
And the players would have loved him, but the media, the city slickers out there,
I mean, but I guess my point is
they hated him. Yeah, it makes sense. Coach O is perfect at LSU. He hired the right guys. Now, I will say this, Florida State, I initially thought Florida State was an incredible job, but you would notice even better, too, is that their facilities have really lacked. They don't have a lot of money at all, and I think the Jimbo buyout's still killing them. So I actually think that they have a little bit of trouble. But USC, I look at USC, and I think that they can absolutely begin competing for big-time championships. I'm talking Pac-12, get in the playoff type of thing. Because LA that recruiting area is ridiculous for talent.
Yeah. Here's the issue, though.
UCLA isn't doing very well. I just think USC can be a power in a sense.
Here's the issue with Southern California. They don't have any continuity. These recruits don't know who the next coach is going to be because they've had so many coaches in the past 10 years. And so what you're seeing is the best players in California come all the way to the East Coast, to Clemson, to Alabama, to Georgia. This is the problem that they have going on. A lot of those guys going to Texas, whether it's Texas A&M or Texas or –
It's like that quarterback that you got, DJ Ukulele, whatever his name is. He's from California.
Yeah, last year we got the number one receiver, Ngata, Joe Ngata, and he plays for Clemson now. And we have another I want to say defensive end. Yeah, the best defensive end in California is Justin Flo. He's from California, right?
Right.
He's most likely going to come to either Clemson or Alabama or Ohio State. We haven't heard his announcement yet. But, so that's the problem that California has right now. All their best guys are coming east because they're like at least Clemson and Ohio State and Alabama have some kind of more stability than Southern California does.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So stability is a good thing. I think
their AD needed to slam the Helton rumors a long time ago. Like, say he's coming back next year. He needed to do that 2 weeks ago.
Probably, but I think they might have been putting feelers out there. They found out that there's not a better option.
It's actually not the worst thing. It's sad, but it's not the worst thing. Now, if you see now here's the interesting thing. Now, no matter what, I want to see more programs do this too. If Clay Helton goes 10-2, like even gets to the Rose Bowl, but doesn't make the college football playoff next year, but you get like a James Franklin to come in, you then have to be mature enough to fire Helton next year now, even if he has like a really good year.
At this point, if you're James Franklin, is Southern California a better job than Penn State?
I would argue yes.
I would argue no.
First of all, at USC, you have an easier conference. The recruiting's a million times better if you're Coach Franklin. And unlike Fleck, I think Franklin's a little worse than Fleck. I think that Franklin would like to win a national championship and be a legend. And I don't think Penn State can win national champ. I think at USC you can build a dynasty. At Penn State, I don't believe that at all.
I don't know about that. I mean, it's been done before. Penn State has been a dynasty in history.
The recruiting is worse at Penn State.
Penn State has been a dynasty status in my lifetime.
When?
And I guess in the 80s and the early 90s.
Yes, same as Nebraska.
All right, so Nebraska has that opportunity too. But here's my point.
I think Nebraska's going to be a dynasty.
I doubt that Penn State is going to fire James Franklin anytime in the next few years for winning 11 games a year and winning Rose Bowls every other 2 or 3 years and having a chance to make the playoffs at some point. Southern California, on the other hand, go 2 or 3 years without winning the Pac-12 or without winning the Rose Bowl or going to the playoffs, you're gone. You're out.
It's higher expectations, but a higher upside.
Yes, that's the gamble you have to have.
Yeah.
That's the gamble. I don't know. Maybe I don't know what. For some reason, I just don't picture. For some reason, it just in my mind, and I could be completely off here. I just don't see a fit with James Franklin in Southern California for whatever reason. I don't know what it is.
I love it. I don't know why. I love it. I think it's perfect.
It doesn't seem right to me.
I don't know who the guy would be. I think he is the natural guy. And he's so much cleaner than Urban Meyer. It's not even funny. But go ahead.
Well, yeah, you're right about that. Anyway, we'll see.
No, he has the offense. He has the swag. Players love the guy. He's tough.
Right.
He's not like a Northeastern crazy guy. But go ahead.
The next thing I want to talk about is the rumors with the Arkansas job. And I don't know how valid these rumors are. But one name I keep hearing come up that Arkansas really, really is targeting is Lane Kiffin at FIU. And the reason they're targeting, well, for a lot of reasons. Obviously, the offensive part of it. Also, the name and the recruiting aspect of it, because he knows, him being in Alabama and Tennessee in the SEC for, well, he was an assistant, obviously, at Alabama, but the head coach at Tennessee, he knows that area, that recruiting base that the SEC needs. He also can attract some very, very big name assistant coaches to come in there and sort of fix that thing. So here's the problem with Arkansas. Well, there's a bunch of problems with Arkansas. I mean, other than the fact that they're the worst team in the SEC.
You can't lay down the one.
But if you look at the national recognition or the amount of eyeballs that are on the Arkansas program every year, they're the last. They have fewer eyeballs on them than Vanderbilt. They have fewer eyeballs on them than either one of the Mississippi teams. They have fewer eyeballs on them than South Carolina or Kentucky or Missouri or whatever. So they're in a place right now where, as far as from a recruiting standpoint, they are completely behind the eight ball. A big name, a Hollywood type of guy, if you want to put it that way, like Lane Kiffin, a big personality, one that everybody in the country knows, is exactly what Arkansas needs. So I think that this would be a great hire for Arkansas. Here's the problem, though. Is it a great job if you're Lane Kiffin? I don't think it is. Because if you're Lane Kiffin, first of all, you're down there at FAU. You're already rich. You have no worries, no stress. They'll never fire him down there at FAU or FIU. Where's he at? FIU, not FAU.
You were right. The first at Florida Atlantic, FAU.
Okay, FAU, yeah.
In Boca.
Yeah, Boca Raton. All right, so anyways, he's fine down there. He's got no stress. He's making a bunch of money. He's playing for a championship this weekend in that conference. But I think that his name is going to come up a bunch more times in the next several years for even bigger jobs than Arkansas. So do you settle for Arkansas, or do you wait for a Notre Dame, or do you wait for, a lot of other ones, a Texas,
Auburn.
An Auburn, something like that, where you can step in and you can actually just, it's a turnkey type of thing where you can start being successful immediately instead of having to rebuild this dumpster program in Arkansas.
Well, I think that the only jobs that Lane would actually get that are better than Arkansas, let's list. I think that Notre Dame, he's not going there, period. That's a polar opposite because they're like a strict university. But Auburn is a very interesting possibility.
Yeah, yes, it would be.
They have Bruce Pearl, who's very outgoing himself. If Lane comes in there and he starts to beat Nick Saban or has that ability to beat Saban, it really would be phenomenal,
Yeah, and it would be a good story because obviously Auburn and Alabama, and he was the coach at Alabama. He's good friends with Nick Saban. The whole thing would be amazing.
Well, here's the argument, Pete. It's like, here's the thing about Lane Kiffin. I think that Lane has underachieved to his potential. I mean, the Tennessee USC time period in his life, even with the Oakland Raiders and Al Davis and how much of a disaster it was with Jamarcus Russell. I like Lane Kiffin actually a lot because, I think he's a funny guy. I think he was a crazy guy, but I love redemption stories, and I feel like he has mellowed out.
He absolutely has.
And I love to see like that progression. Like I love the story.
He's even said that his time at Tennessee and at Southern California, he wasn't ready to be a head coach. He just was too young, too naive, too cocky.
He was daddy's boy at that.
Yeah,
time.
he wasn't ready. He got thrown into that, and he's definitely, I think, a much better coach now than he was then. And I think him working with Nick Saban for those several years that he was at Alabama really, really helped him learn how to run a football program correctly. He learned from the best in the business.
If you're Lane Kiffin, this I think is his motivation, though, at this point. If he takes another year to stay at FAU, first of all, Lane always has the demons in the closet, like we talked about, Pete. Like him leaving Tennessee at night, him with the co-eds. Like, he's not for everybody. He still isn't, So,
but he was young then. I mean, he was like 30 years old.
With Lane Kiffin, well, the thing is with Lane is that I think he wants to be a legend in college football. Like, I do think he wants to attempt to ride the horse again, to go to the big program, and succeed and win championships. And he needs to go somewhere and be there for the next 10 years. He needs to go there and stay and not be like his old self and look to leave. Would you agree with that?
But nobody
about his legacy.
These days, nobody keeps you for 10 years unless you're winning a lot of games.
That's the great thing about Arkansas. If he took the Arkansas job, I know the fans have crazy expectations, but for Lane, if he takes the Arkansas job, it's not a stepping stone job at all because we talked about its challenges, right? of how you're in the SEC West, you're going up against A&M's money, Alabama, Auburn, LSU. You're going up against the best. But if he was at Arkansas and he stayed there for 12 years, I think that his legacy would be really a really positive legacy. And for Lane, he just needs to figure out if he wants to live in Arkansas and be the guy there. I think it's an intriguing place, Pete, because he would completely rewrite his story. He would be and my argument for Lane, if he wants the job, no matter if he stayed there and righted that program in any way, and even if he took them to a Sugar Bowl, it would really be an incredible feat for Lane to do this at Arkansas. If he won at Texas, he'd be just another guy. But if he did it at Arkansas, he'd be a legend. He'd be incredible. He'd be the Mount Rushmore of superstars. He'd be a hero to that state. It would be a very interesting spot.
So here's my question. Why is Florida State not calling this guy? He's in Florida. He's been in Florida. He knows how to recruit Florida. He's already said on multiple occasions he loves living in Florida. Florida is a turnkey system. I mean, it's a dumpster fire right now, but they're not too far off with the right guy, maybe a year or two off from being very relevant in college football again. And so, I mean, if you're Florida State, do you call Lane Kiffin? If you're Lane Kiffin, do you want to be at Florida State?
If I'm Lane, I'll tell you why I don't want to be at Florida State.
Why?
Because Florida State, the Florida State fan base, their expectations are bonkers. They expect to win national championships. They expect to win the ACC like in a couple of years. They're probably the most impatient fan base in college football.
I don't know about that, but how is that any different than Auburn or any other big program that he would go?
Because at Auburn, they understand that that Nick Saban runs that place, and also Auburn has more money than Florida State. And also, playing in the ACC, even if Lane goes 10-2 but loses to you guys every year, which he will, it's still a failure to Florida State fans.
I think the same could be said for Auburn.
But also, Bobby Bowden is a
Listen, you're talking about before last week. They were ready to run Gus Malzahn out of there.
But Bobby Bowden's a legend at Florida State. Lane will never be considered a legend at Florida State. But also, first of all, Gus has been there for like 9 years.
Yeah, but the Auburn fans were ready to run Gus Malzahn out until he beat Alabama last week.
But you see that offense that Gus has. He's hit or miss every single year. He hasn't developed a quarterback in 5 years.
Right. He's also beat Nick Saban 3 times, which is 1 more time than Dabo Swinney, 2 more times than Ed Orgeron, and all more times than any other coach in football right now.
Well, he gets to play him every single year.
Right. And
also look at the ways that they win in the hokiest, luckiest ways ever.
I don't know. I don't say luck doesn't exist in football.
Auburn could do better than Gus. Do you really think Gus is going to win a championship soon? Also, Kevin Steele, his defensive coordinator, is phenomenal there. The defense has carried that program.
All right, but
Gus is hokey.
All right, so you're talking about a guy who wins 11 games on average every year. He goes to New Year's Six Bowl games almost every year. Has beat Nick Saban 3 times, which is more than anybody other active coach in the country, including Dabo Swinney, and they're ready to run him out of there.
Yeah.
And Lane Kiffin could do better.
It's because Lane will absolutely do better there.
How do you know that?
Because Lane is a better offensive coach than Gus. First of all, they're beating Alabama when they're damaged goods at the end of the year anyway. When you saw Gus play you guys, he has no offense.
So how many coaches would succeed at the level that Malzahn has at Auburn on a regular basis? Not many.
I would say maybe 12.
Damn, 12. Go ahead, name 11 other ones.
I would name like Will Healy from Charlotte will be better.
Stop it with that. You just named the Charlotte coach is better than Gus Malzahn.
Yes.
All right, go ahead, keep going.
I would say Lane. I would say Franklin. I think Joe Brady would give it an interesting dynamic to Auburn.
I like that one.
You like Joe Brady, yeah.
Yeah, I do, yeah.
I think that like if they wanted to, like Kendall Browse would be an interesting name. Now a lot of people wouldn't hire him. I just think that Auburn's like you got to look at offensive coordinators. So maybe like 5 or 6 names would do better. I don't know. I mean, Dufford's going to get fired soon anyway. He's going to get fired next year. You talk to Auburn fans who watch every game, they know that he's not a great offensive player.
There's not a single well, I won't say a single one. But that's probably not accurate.
Also,
but
they haven't had
I think there's very few
receiver in years at Auburn.
There's very few Auburn fans right now that are calling for Gus Malzahn to get fired.
You really think so?
I think so after last week, yeah.
Oh, boy. I think that if they gave him an extension, they'd be pissed off.
Well, extension is different than firing.
I think that
he still has like 4 years left on his contract.
I don't think Auburn fans like him at all. They
like beating Alabama, and he's done that 3 times now. They do like that.
Yeah, of course. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
you want to talk about the championship weekend?
Yeah, we can do that.
Let's do it.
Let's just run down. We're running out of time here. Let's run down. I'm going to name the Power 5 championship games. I'm going to get your picks real quick, and then we can talk maybe a little bit. So Oregon and Utah. Obviously, Utah is sitting at number 5 in the playoff poll. If Georgia loses to LSU and Utah wins, I think Utah gets in. How do you see this game going, Utah and Oregon?
I think that this will actually be a great game. I actually think this will be competitive. I think Oregon has a lot to prove in this game. I think Oregon's defense can step up. They just have to stop the running game of Utah's running back, whose name just is Zach Moss, who's a really good running back. Utah's a very physical team. I believe if Utah wins this game, with an LSU win, they are probably going to be going to the playoff. They actually are deserving to me of going to the playoff, especially with Oklahoma almost losing to TCU. Like, I would not put Oklahoma in unless chaos occurs. I'm going to say chaos occurs. I'll take Oregon in this game. I will.
Wow. I was about to say, until you said that I agree with everything you said up until you said Oregon's going to win.
Is Utah winning?
I think Utah will win, but here's the thing. I'm not like super confident in that pick. I do think that it's going to be close. I think it's going to be like a 3-point game or something.
Yeah.
So anybody could win. I'm picking Utah to win, and I'm picking Utah to make it into the playoffs. So, all right. So Oklahoma and Baylor. Now this is a crazy. So I don't know if you've been paying attention to the Vegas line on this. Baylor, as of yesterday, I don't know what it is now. Baylor was an 8.5-point underdog to Oklahoma as of yesterday. I think that's crazy. I think that Baylor has a very good chance of winning this game outright. And even if they don't, I don't see them losing by 8.5 points or more. Do you?
I think it's absurd that this line is this way.
Yeah.
It's a little scary, even as me kind of rooting for Baylor, though. It's a little scary.
I mean, but what constitutes that much of a line? We saw the game between them, a month ago, and Baylor dominated them for the first half. They completely fell apart. Now, all credit to Oklahoma for coming back from 28-3, but still, Baylor lost that game as much as Oklahoma won it, right? So, who thinks that Baylor just all of a sudden? I mean, and since then, Baylor's been playing great.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't see any reason why Baylor. I think this should be a pick'em, honestly. And, another game, just like Oregon and Utah, I think is going to come down to maybe the last play of the game.
I agree. I want Baylor to win, but I think Oklahoma late will surge through and win. Now, all you need is 2 touchdowns, though. So with how explosive Oklahoma's offense is, I thought Oklahoma played well last week, actually, at Oklahoma State. Man, it's tough. So if the winner of this game could be going to the playoff.
Could be, yeah.
And this is the toughest game to pick, but I'm going to pick Oklahoma to actually win this game.
Okay.
But like a close game. I completely think that people are disrespecting Baylor, and Baylor's defense is good. So I completely agree with you that it's not an easy Oklahoma pick. Now maybe people are basing it off of the second half. There is a world, Pete, where Oklahoma's talent just overwhelms Baylor. Like, there is a world, but it shouldn't be the popular sentiment that Oklahoma's going to rock Baylor.
I'm picking Baylor just because, first of all, obviously Oklahoma's very talented. I think they have the leg up on coaching. They have a leg up on experience at quarterback. I mean, Jalen Hurts is very experienced, right?
Well, that rule's fantastic as a coach.
But I'm going to say, I picked Baylor. It's hard to beat the same team twice in the same year. Very hard. And so I think that Baylor's going to win a last-second field goal against Oklahoma. All right, so moving on to Ohio State and Wisconsin. Now, this game, as of yesterday, was minus 16, so Ohio State's favored by 16. I don't think that's enough. I think Ohio State rolls and wins by 3 or 4 touchdowns.
I'll take Wisconsin to cover in this game.
16 points.
Because Wisconsin is playing great right now. And I will say this about Ohio State. We didn't talk about this game much with Harbaugh and Ohio State. Shea Patterson was absolutely lighting up that secondary. And as a Clemson fan, that must have been music to your ears or whatever analogy. Ohio State secondary didn't look that good against Michigan. They really didn't.
Yeah.
You know? Like they're not playing as dominantly, and they're finally playing good teams on their schedule.
Right.
I wish that Wisconsin had a better passing game. I do like as crazy as this sounds, I think Wisconsin will cover in this game, but Ohio State will still win the game.
Okay, so I think this game will stay somewhat close for 2 or 3 quarters, and I think the fourth quarter Ohio State pours it on.
Guess what? This game doesn't. Even if Ohio State like magically got upset, they're still in the playoffs. So do you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Wisconsin has no chance.
Yeah, LSU. We'll get to that in a minute, but LSU and Ohio State, they can lose and still be in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. So next, Clemson and Virginia. This game is a 28.5 point spread as of yesterday. I don't know what it is now. Obviously, there's nobody in America that really thinks that Virginia is going to beat Clemson. I mean, anything's possible. But, I mean, as far as the spread goes, do you see Virginia covering the spread?
I do not. And you guys, in Charlotte, you would notice you guys are exceptional in Charlotte. In fact, the year with Kelly Bryant, I think, was it last year?
2 years ago.
2 years ago, you played Miami there. Did you play you won by like 49 points against Miami and a Mark Richt team.
It was 35-3.
This is where you guys completely flex your muscles. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't care.
The North Carolina game was actually a good game a couple of years ago where they need an onside kick late.
That was 2016, I think. Yeah,
that was it. But you guys play great, and this time of the year, you guys are all the way locked in. Bryce Perkins will be running for his life, so I just think you guys will pour it on.
Well, I agree, and I don't care if this game's in Charlotte or in Europe or on the moon. It's going to be a slaughter. So, yeah, I agree with you. I think Clemson wins by 30 or 35. All right.
Big one.
LSU and Georgia. This might be the game of the week. Probably the most competitive game. Well, maybe Oklahoma and Baylor might be competitive as well, but LSU and Georgia. So I think LSU was favored by 6.5 last time. No, 7.5 last time I checked.
Yeah.
A lot of people think that LSU is just going to go in there and blow Georgia out. I am not in that camp. I mean, it's possible, certainly. I think this is probably the hardest game to pick out of all of them, honestly. So Georgia's defense is as good as anybody's in the country right now. At least they have been for the past 3 or 4 games. They're playing just as good as Clemson's defense, Ohio State's defense. Now their offense, unfortunately, leaves a little bit to be desired. They have some injuries and some suspensions for this game, which is really going to hurt them. But I feel like
Swift might be.
I think Swift's playing. Cager is hurt, their number 1 receiver, and then they have another guy that's suspended. One of their star defensive players is suspended for the entire game. So I think that, though, if Georgia can keep this game at least close, at least within a touchdown or 2 going into the fourth quarter, there's a chance. If LSU somehow gets a 24-point lead at any point in the game, it's over. Georgia's not built to come back from that. So how do you see this game playing out?
For a while, I've been saying that Georgia is a really good matchup for LSU and that it's going to be like a 50-50 game. But as I've watched these two teams play the last couple of weeks, Georgia playing a Texas A&M team at home, you just saw the difference. When Texas A&M went to LSU, LSU's defense is rounding the corner. I think LSU's defense, I said LSU's defense wasn't very good. They've been making strides. And against an elite offense like Clemson or Ohio State, they probably will get exposed a little bit. But with Jake Fromm, just how disappointing Georgia's offense has been all year. And then with LSU, the way that LSU played against Texas A&M, the intensity of this defense, I actually am going to be a contrarian to your opinion. I think LSU runs them off the field by like 28 points. I think Joe Burrow and this offense gets rolling. This is a magical year for LSU. They're motivated to win the SEC title. They haven't won it in so long. So yeah, I see a big time LSU win.
I wouldn't be surprised if that happened. What you just said, and that seems to be the general consensus around the country, that what you said is going to happen. And so I wouldn't be surprised if that happened. First of all, I hope it doesn't happen because I want to see a good game. But I still, there's something in the back of my mind. I watched Georgia all year, watched a bunch of their games, and I still think, despite the loss to South Carolina, despite the fact that they're lacking somewhat on offense, especially at the receiver position, I still feel like there's so much talent on that team, just so much, and that Jake Fromm is such a gamer that I just don't see them getting blown. I mean, when's the last time Georgia got blown out by anybody?
Maybe Auburn, like years ago.
It's been a long time, man. It's been several years since they got blown out by anybody.
You're right. Kirby does an exceptional job.
Yeah. So I just don't see a blowout, but I hope it's good.
How many do you think LSU is going to score in the game?
I think that no matter who LSU plays, will score 30, at least 30, even against Clemson.
I think that if Georgia's going to win, it's 35 has to be the max to me if Georgia's going to win.
I mean, I could see a 35-30 or 35-25, something like that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It could be great. I mean, Auburn played LSU tough, so that's got to be the model for Georgia.
Exactly. That's why I have some hope for Georgia because, Auburn held LSU to under 30 points in that game.
Right.
Yeah.
I just think LSU's better right now. They're humming. They're playing better. It's a magical year for LSU.
Yeah, but I would not be surprised of all the quote unquote upsets. As people thinking that LSU is just going to roll Georgia. I don't see a roll happening, but we'll see. Who knows?
I hope that Oregon wins because I want to see Baylor or Oklahoma in the playoffs. Specifically, Baylor would be a really fun team in the playoffs.
Yeah, in that case, Clemson would be 3, Baylor would be 4, and Clemson would beat the ever-living hell out of Baylor.
Wait. Who would be 4?
Baylor. If you said Baylor, if Baylor got in, they would be 4.
But Clemson's not. I don't think Clemson's going to number.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, you're right. Clemson would be 3. You're right.
LSU, Baylor, or Ohio State.
I think there's a huge separation between Ohio State, LSU, Clemson, and everybody else.
Oh yeah. Whoever gets in. That's why number 1's so crucial.
Yeah, and also, number 1. You're right. Number 1 is crucial because number 2 is going to have to play Clemson.
I don't know. I think that Ohio State will probably still stay. You were right. Didn't Ohio State leapfrog? And you said that they would.
Yeah, they did.
They leapfrog now.
Yeah.
Which a lot of people are complaining. I'm not, complaining because I think Ohio State, if they beat Wisconsin, it's lights out, for the number 1 seed.
There's still a lot of things that could happen. If Ohio State blows Wisconsin out, they'll stay number 1. If they have a close game with Wisconsin and then LSU beats Georgia, I think LSU will move to number 1.
And the committee, I guess Clemson, Ohio State will be really highly rated, but I think that LSU being number 1 would be better for the ratings in the game.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the ratings are going to be good no matter who they are.
And the tickets in New Orleans, the NCAA and New Orleans will make more money if LSU is playing down there.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I think that the ratings this year are going to be great because you have all these name brands. You got Clemson, you got Ohio State, you got LSU, you got Georgia in the mix. I mean, Oklahoma's still in the mix. I mean, I no matter which way you put these teams in any order, I think they're going to be good ratings for it.
You know what? As a Giants fan, I want the coach from Baylor to come to the Giants, but the bad news is if Oregon wins and if Baylor makes the playoffs, then he might just stay at Baylor then.
Do you want the Baylor coach to the Giants?
Yes. Matt Rule.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he's been in talks. Well, he's a New Yorker himself.
Right.
He has an NFL background. He would be far the best.
Yeah, interesting. I haven't thought about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, maybe he will.
Or Ron wouldn't be awful. I've been coming around to Ron Rivera, too. What?
First Gettleman, then Ron Rivera.
We're bringing the Panthers with us.
Stop it.
Panther North. Why? You don't think Ron's good, right?
No, I don't like Ron. I've been wanting Ron Rivera fired for 2 years now.
Wow. He's a stand-up guy, and guess what? Mike Shula would be the OC.
Yeah, Ron Rivera's a great guy, great father, great husband, all that. Everyone loves him fine. He doesn't win football games. So
defense is all right though. You still have a pass rush.
Even their defense this year is not very good.
No, but Ron can fix it.
Why didn't he fix it at Carolina?
Ron.
Stop.
We'll have to have a separate podcast for this, Pete.
Yeah. All right.
A ton of fun, and thanks everybody for listening.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Have a good one.